welcome to UPfront. Today, for 1.2 billion Ghana cedis, of course, to what? Of course, $1 billion. What did I underestimate that? In the issuance of a new Ghana card, through to whether or not you can use your voter ID card in the registration for this particular card. The national ID system and the trouble surrounding it has not gone away. There is even a court case currently standing before the courts of the Republic of Ghana questioning how elements of the registration is being left out. That is, you couldn't use the voter ID card in registering. Today, I have summoned a former boss of the NIA, that is the National Identification Authority, the immediate past CEO who spent quality time dealing with some of these issues, proud to leave in office after elections change. We'll take a break. When we go for that particular break, after the break, I'll let you know who the boss of the NIA formally is and how this conversation is supposed to go. You're welcome back. This is UPfront. My name is Raymond Akwa. Today, we're looking at exactly how much should it cost us to actually purchase and run the national ID system. Beyond that, is it justify a cause for the inclusion of the voter ID in the determinant of what qualifies you to register for this particular ID? And we are almost 10 days into the exercise. When is the Greater Accra going to have the rest of the days for everybody, mass registration? That question is also on the minds of many here. But luckily, I got one man who knows about this process, who dealt with it when he was in office, who had to leave office after government changed hands along the line. My guest today is Osei Kwame Griffiths. He's the immediate past CEO of the National Identification Authority. Welcome, sir, to UPfront.
Thank you.
I hope you're doing well, sir.
I'm doing very well. Yeah,
let's start from this particular basis because there's a lot of thinking around. First, we were told it was $1.2 billion. Then government said, no, hold on. It's $293 million for deployment in the first year and basically for issuing of cards. The rest of them, it's when we sell services. If we go through the process, that will be able to determine that. So you don't need to worry yourself about this process. We really are in the throes of making it work for you, and that the money is worth every peso. Indeed, they even broke it down into telling you that we comparatively had this at the best price that we could ever get on the market for delivering the scope and the quality of work that we wanted. You oppose that, right?
Yes, I do.
And what's your basis for this opposition?
Well, first of all, Ghana is not the first to implement identity management system. And before I left office, we had spoken to several companies. We had engaged several companies, and they had submitted proposals. And most of the proposals that they had submitted didn't have in any way the sort of money that is being mentioned by national identification.
Most of them?
Yes.
Not all of them?
All of them. Let me put it this way.
They did include MIS?
Well, MIS, we were speaking to them somewhere in 2014. Actually, we had a contract with them at IMS, not MIS.
Yes, IMS.
We had a contract to register.
And to be clear, IMS is the company that's currently running the system with government. So you are told that government is supposed to pay an amount and the private partner is supposed to also pay some amount for the operationalization of the current program. That's the IMS anyway.
Yes. So they have actually, we run a foreigner system with them. And during the foreigner system, there was an attempt, a discussion to, first of all, expand that somewhere in 2014. But that was curtailed because, a lot of even within NIA, there were a lot of objections. You run a
foreigner system with IMS?
Yes, which I believe is currently still being run.
Okay, so by that foreigner system, was it the one that foreigners pay, then they get instant issuance?
Yes. Exactly.
Was it the scope and the quality of work that's supposed to be done? Was it the same as well?
No, I'm just saying you have asked me whether we had anything with
engagement with
yes, and then I was telling you.
Okay, very fairly so.
So, but there were other companies that we had a Chinese firm, which we got very far with them. They had proposed to do a system for $115 million.
115?
Yes, and that system varies in scope with what they are saying. It has other things that this one does not have, you know. And of course, there are other things. It's not the exact same scope, but it's fairly, in terms of pricing, very close. In that had a technology institute that had to be built. It had a disaster recovery site, which is more or less a mini NIA, because when anything happens to your main site, you should be able to deploy a card from your DRC. So it's not like a disaster recovery for just a data center. And then it had 10 regional offices, and then 50 zonal offices, actually, because we had to zone. We couldn't have an office in all districts, so we had to zone. So all these things were included in the 115.
I think what most people will be interested in, really, is to do with whether or not it was to the same standard that currently is running the IMS.
Yes, it was to the same standard.
Same?
Yes, and I'll tell you why I say that. And let me also mention that quite apart from the Chinese one, we also had a Ukrainian company. And that's a Ukrainian company, which we actually got very much interested in because of the experience they had. They did the system in Kenya, and Kenya has one of the best integrated systems on the African continent. So we went to Kenya to inspect the system, and their scope is pretty much the same as what is being spoken about today.
First you said it was the same. Now you said pretty much the same.
Yes.
Are you saying that
the reason why I'm saying that is
because one of the things you're justifying this amount with is the scope required. And they're saying that this is superior, this has all the elements, this has a huge memory, this has a lot of data content that you can pad on this particular card, and it's basically the ECOWAS card that you have.
Okay, let me explain. They had from registration to card issuance, which means, you know, just for, because I heard somebody speak on behalf of NIA on another station talking about, more or less indicating that the scope was not the same. From registration to card issuance costed for 16 million cards, which was estimated to cover the population from ages 15 and above. Now, within NIA, alongside, we were going to deploy, because we had cards in stock, the old 2D barcode cards, which were going to be used for below 15 years. So talking about the fact that now it is not just 15 years and above, it's not a new thing. Okay. And they are not going to buy those cards either. They still have those cards in stock to deploy for that age group. So it was going to be deployed alongside anyway. You know, so the scope is pretty much the same. When you talk of now, NIA saying that they are going to issue from 0 to, you know, to infinity, it is the same thing, because they are going to buy the smart cards that will take from 15 years and above and use the 2D barcode cards for the junior ages. Now, another thing also we need to note is the card itself. The card was going to be between 80 to 128K card. Now they say they are doing 148K card, which is not too different to warrant such a huge price difference.
But some difference can be identified.
But the difference, I mean, that difference you can identify of about 20K more in terms of the memory space. But, but like I'm saying, it's not such a difference that will say that it is going to cost almost twice when they have proposed to do it for 123 million euros. And you are saying just for the first year, you are going to spend 293, which is about twice the price. You know, and then you have
also... But that
also...
has been clarified, though. They said that for the issuance, which is basically everybody who has to get a card within the period they are issuing,
yes,
that's the 293.
Yes, I understand that, but it's the same thing that these people were going to do for pretty much 123 million euros. That's why I'm saying that. The fact that you are issuing cards to the junior ages, you know, doesn't mean that you are buying those cards. Those cards are in stock. We have them in NIA. You understand what I'm saying? So, and it is the same thing that Ukrainians were going to do. They were also going to produce new cards for the junior ages. They were going to use the ones we had in stock for the junior ages. And it was going to be The memory is about the same. It is a dual interface card, just like this one. In fact, they were going to even go strictly according to the ECOWAS standards as it was then. Now, I hear the NIA say they comply with ECOWAS standards. What that means is that, because I initiated, something with the World Bank, trying to appeal to ECOWAS to more or less not be too strict with their standards. And we had a meeting in Kigali to iron things out where other nations came in with their concerns. So there was a movement to, instead of strictly saying they would do polycarbonate card, to more or less bring that down a little bit to where each nation can use their own substrate, but still achieve the 10-year lifespan they are looking for. So for them to say now they conform means that that process actually has gotten to the end successfully. And there is some, lowering of those standards, because initially it was just ridiculous for ECOWAS to demand those things of West African nations.
Okay, I get your point. Now, let me understand this. The NIA has actually explained in detail that really government's only paying $124 million out of this $293.6 million, which is supposed to cost 42% of the first-year projects and will be spent on specifically the central site, upgrading of the NIA data center from Tier 2 to Tier 3 level, procurement of disaster recovery systems, procurement of 2MX card printers for 2D code cards, procurement of additional 2D barcode cards, and training of over 70,000 field operators for 12 operational regions, and deployment of and compensation of the 12,000 field operators for the period on 12 operational regions will be dealing with. Issuance of 9.2 million 2D barcode cards to Ghanaian children and 15-year-olds, and the procurement of 95 operational vehicles and 60 motorbikes. The procurement of 350 kVA generators for the data center, and the procurement of 1,600 generator sets for field operations. In fact, it goes on and on, but I want to drill down to procurement of registration materials and consumables, all in general as part of this cost, provision of mass communication and information services, insurance for NIA personnel, vehicles and equipment, refurbishment of NIA headquarters building, and other administrative expenditure. So that is all that there is to this particular project in the first year. Indeed, the 169 is supposed to be paid for by the grouping, the IMS. The design and the building and technical for verification is also supposed to be part of it. The providing of technical field operational support for the 25,000 NIA registration centers across the country. Then the provider of consumables for personalization with 1,100 data cards, and the provider of 2,500 mobile registration units. This and other things are what the amount of money which this, what they call external entity, which is aiding us doing this particular project, will be paying for. Which element in all of this is difficult for you to appreciate that it puts up to this 293?
First of all, let me say that all these things you have mentioned are logistics and other human resource, training and PR, basically, that you need to enroll and issue cards. Now, what I said, for them to throw out all this list, to make it look as if, it's quite a lengthy list. You have a company that says, from registration to card issuance, it is going to cost the nation 123 million euros. That means that there will be PR, because you need to engage in PR for, to have an effective mass registration and continuous registration process. That means there will be vehicles going on the field. Personnel will have to be trained. All these things, there has to be reliable power supply. So
and
generators
government
will be
pays the 123 million euros, that's all?
This is in writing. It went to cabinet.
We just got. How do you recruit somebody to do this job? Do you do
what we were interested in?
Source tendering?
Well, what we did was, not necessarily. We didn't
restricted tendering.
We didn't do. When we are approached by companies, we were more interested in those who were more or less bringing some financial support alongside. So that is why you know.
But if you'd opened up, wouldn't you have gotten so many of these tender biddings coming in from various institutions?
Yes, we could have had that. In fact, we had a lot of the companies submitting proposals that were not really solicited for.
Okay,
you know, and
so that's why I get confused with this. Exactly why does it look like? Because the current system, what the CEO is saying is that we were there, the vice president said the technical team has actually done a recommendation, so we should go for this company. I don't get the same, let's go through the procurement process, let's get to select the very best.
So you are calling, that does not mean that there was any competition within the, what they are doing.
I'm not saying that there was a competition at all. It sounds to me that there was a selection of a grouping that might not have even gone through any at all. Yeah.
No, let me first of all, I didn't answer most of your questions that you asked. So let me finish that, and then I will take the question of what selection took place, and then I will talk about the selection that took place under the current administration. One, the private partner is contributing 169 million to NIA's 124. I think I have made my point. That the 124, we had 123 million euros, which is not too different from the 124 for everything the 169 and the 124 is going to do.
Same scope of project?
Yes, same scope of project.
Exactly the same?
Well, exactly the same. Well, not, what is the variation in this place? Even in our case, we had estimated that we had about 12 million cards in our custody for the junior ages. Now you are telling me they say 9.2 million, you understand? So, which means that there is enough cards to print for the junior ages and even a leftover. You understand, of course. And then they were going to supply 16 million cards for the population above 15 years, you know, which is about the same as what these guys are these new, the scope, within the scope that this new contract is going to supply. Okay. Now, that aside, it says government is not paying anything. First of all, let me say that the 1.2 billion that is being mentioned, which is actually about 1.4 billion because there's tax exempt of 150 to 170 million dollars.
Okay.
It is all government money.
1.2 billion.
Of course, it is all government money.
How is that?
Are you telling me that the private party is running at a loss? They are investing, putting in initial investment, and they are going to recoup their investment using the mandate of NIA. The mandate of NIA that is used to generate revenue, that revenue is government money. And you even need permission from Parliament to spend such, you know, such internally generated funds. So everything is government money. What could have happened was for NIA to use the 124 because other vendors could have done it for that and even less. And everything in terms of generating the revenue comes in because this system can generate a lot of revenue by selling recognition services. Okay. You understand? Anybody who goes to the bank and use your card, if they hit your server, they are paying a certain amount. The telcos had a failed registration, SIM card registration system because I warned them that without a credible identification system that is nationwide, you can never register. You have a credible SIM card. Nothing credible can ride on a weak identification system. The e-transform project, the World Bank was willing to give us money. In fact, even in January, they sent an email, which I was in copy. The current CEO was in copy, where they had expressed interest to give us money. Because all that money could have been deployed instead of going into a PPP that does not make any sense, but takes revenue away from the nation. You understand what I'm saying? I get you. So my point I'm trying to make is that you have enough if you can spend 124 to set up the system. I heard somebody who was saying he was an expert of identity management and saying that you need to finish everything before revenue even comes in. That's not true. Look, even if you register Greater Accra, revenue starts coming in. Most of the commercial activities of first phase. Yes, first phase.
How is that supposed to be generated?
Well, because within Greater Accra, if you have registered and you are going on to other regions, Just the commercial activities in Greater Accra alone is a huge percentage of what happens in the entire nation.
That's not what you mean by commercial activities.
Well, like people going to the banks and what have you, transactions that are taking place, registration of SIM card.
Registered,
right from the get-go, if you plan properly. In fact, during my time, I had a very detailed planning session with the operations guys, the head of operations and a few guys. And we were not going to actually issue the cards, all the cards instantly. Why? One, there is one particular challenge that comes along with managing of critical consumables that within the NIA building reside in strong rooms. Now you have them going to be spread across 2,700 centers. So we had at that time taken a decision, okay, we will do the deferred issuance, but not as lengthy a period as it was. While the people are in the field, the cards will be printed and sent into the field. So the production team, the card production team will be running a shift after the registration team and be sending the cards into the field.
It won't be instant.
That is now they are doing it all instant. That is the planning that at least we had spoken about and started, formulating a field operations plan around. But there would be certain centers where we would do instant issuance for a fee. And that will generate revenue. So we had so many things. We were speaking to MasterCard. And MasterCard was willing to give us money upfront, even to pilots. They were willing to give us money.
I see. Was that to the tune of 124 million?
No, not to the tune of 124 million.
So
but
the
all
amount
these,
of money they were going to give us was not going to be enough for it to set up the process?
No, it wasn't going to be enough. No particular institution was going to give us enough. In fact, when they started the SIM card registration, MTN was speaking to us. They wanted to give us their budget for SIM card registration, so that when we go into the field, there's a joint operation where we pick, we register people and their SIM cards, and then we just give them that database.
Oh, okay.
You see, a lot of telcos were willing to do that, just that we were not ready as an institution. So they had to go ahead and do
their own.
You understand? So there are so many ways, creative ways, for you to partner with other institutions who desperately need this identity management system that you are putting in place.
But there's an interesting question. You say that 1.2 billion is way too much.
Yes.
293 is also way too much.
Yes, it is.
And you believe that it could have been done with just government's contribution to the amount of money?
I believe so.
124
yes.
or even less in that particular case.
Why didn't just you do about it? That. Well, we were, when I took office in 2015, we started engaging we had a serious look at the EDAPS company that did the registration in Kenya. In fact, we went to management went and the board went to Kenya to, not the entire board, I mean the board chairman and then some management members went to Kenya to inspect the system they had done. We were very happy with the system they had put in place. It makes sense. There is no multiple issuing of cards like we have here. The entire database is a data warehousing architecture where every institutional database is kept in there, and the core identity management database sit on top where all of them can access for their basic identity needs. So it was a brilliant architecture that we thought that we could do here. We engaged them right away. Somewhere along the line, we had the IMS company now claiming that FIMS was actually a pilot project to the nationals, and that they had committed funds in preparing for the nationals because there had been a discussion by my predecessor towards the registration of nationals by expanding the FIMS system, But all that was not really true. We had several a legal opinion from the Attorney General's office in which, before he issued he indicated that most of the documents that she based her decision, her opinion on were actually coming from the IMS side. When you go from within NIA, there was an issue with documentation where actually the bill of quantities that shows that we bought X amount of laptops or Y amount of service and at what price was very difficult to find. In fact, when the Attorney General gave us a legal opinion, she indicated that NIA should engage a firm to do an investigative audit of the film system.
Okay.
We got in touch with Pricewaterhouse to do that. They communicated to us on several occasions and sometimes in writing that they were being frustrated. They were not getting the documentation they needed to be able to carry out the value for money audit. Somewhere along the line, they came up with their findings, but the core part of assessing a system that had been procured was missing out of it because the bill of quantities never actually got to them. No credible one. Later on, some emails flew around, which I was in copy. When you look at that, you could tell that you can't really use that for anything. But of course, there were other issues that they raised, which indicated strongly that the nation has not been dealt with, fairly by this company. So it was around that point that when we sent the EDAP's contract to Cabinet, there was an issue for a Cabinet subcommittee to sit and find out whether, in actual fact, IMS, the scope they are claiming they have, which is registration of nationals, they actually have the mandate to do that. We have committed ourselves enough for them to do that.
Okay.
And the report came out, signed by 3 ministers of state, which showed clearly that there was nothing like that. The approvals from the Ministry of Finance, they didn't have a final approval from Ministry of Finance, as they claim that they have. So the issue of whether they had claim to the nationals didn't come in. It was around that time that there was change, the change took place.
So you didn't engage the IMS?
Well, there was some engagement and discussions alongside, but like I said...
You didn't engage them in the contracting? You didn't in any way pledge Ghana's interest in contracting them for 1.2 billion?
No, not at all. The figure 1.2 billion is a very new thing. Let us place that on record.
Because very senior members of this government have stated that categorically.
Well, because they don't know, what has actually...
has made that point to everybody's hearing, that all of the brouhaha that the current leadership is suffering is because you did so.
I responded to Gabi. That in fact, Gabi said there was a contract for 1.2 billion. And I told Gabi that if there is a contract for 1.2 billion, all you need to do is to bring out the contract and expose the former administration. Why don't you bring it out? There was nothing like that. There was a discussion to do that, and we got a letter from the president.
Was there a discussion to the tune of 1.2 billion?
Not to the tune of 1.2 billion.
Have you committed the state to 1.2 billion contract?
No.
Or any contract in that particular
There was
case
no
with IMS?
commitment in any way of a contract of 1.2 billion or any contract for the registration of nationals by IMS. No, zero, not even for $10 million by IMS. There was no contract.
As of when you left office?
Yes.
Explain to us again, what was your engagement as of the time you left office with IMS?
Let me explain to you. When a former CEO took office, and I'm trying to stay away from mentioning names. Yeah. When a former CEO took office, he mentioned that he wanted to expand the FIPS contract to cover nationals. In a PPP, this does not go well with a lot of people, especially within management. And as the discussions went on, when it is perceived that you are not in support of what was happening, you were sidelined. So you are saying that... Let me finish. Let me finish. I want the point clarified. Let me finish. If I don't clarify it, I will not understand. I'm sure most people will not understand. It will be clear. The former CEO you're talking about is Dr. William Ahaji. It's not No, it's not Dr. William Ahaji. I didn't want to mention, but because he was your predecessor. No, he wasn't my predecessor. You check this thing well. But let me finish with what I'm saying, because then things started... Oh, Dr. Koba. Things started going out. Information started going out that a company was getting a contract for over $300 million and what have you from National ID. I remember very well, we were offsite at a retreat when, was it Daily Graphic or so published it, there was a lot of radio stations that were discussing the fact that we were signing a contract, which was not even the case. We were not signing anything. There were still discussions going on. Then the president, he stepped in and said that we should halt and engage stakeholders, do an elaborate stakeholder consultation, and listen to the genuine concerns of the masses. That was, I believe, I may not have quoted the letter, verbatim, but similar to what they said. Then when that happened, NIA started engaging in stakeholder consultation. Now, instead of halting the process, they seem to be, because initially it wasn't a letter, it was a phone call, I'm told that the phone call came in that, you know what, hold what you are doing because people are raising concerns. Then, instead of halting, they seem to be a fast track. That is the first time as head of technology.
You were?
Yes. I was given a smart card specification that we needed to sign a non-disclosure, and then after that, sign the specification on behalf of the government of Ghana. When I looked at that, first of all, I hadn't requested smart card specification as much as I was concerned for nationals, because it was very clear that a smart card specification, the IMS had already submitted a specification for the foreigners. So for you to say that you want a smart card specification for the expanded scope, at the time when we are being told that we should hold on, that didn't sit well with me. And then also, the fact that I have to sign a non-disclosure, so I did a memo to my boss at that time to alert him that no private company can have intellectual property rights on the national ID card. No, not in any form or shape.
So that's why
that memo is there. I mean, these are some of the things that I'm telling you that, So eventually, when NIA sent a report that they had finished with a stakeholder consultation and wanted to proceed, permission to proceed, the action that was taken was that the board and the chief executive were both relieved of their duty. That is a clear sign that there was no approval, I mean, more or less, to me, that there was no, people were not happy with what was happening. And that is when
IMS in this case.
With the facts, the PPP versus
arrangement,
all that arrangement that was going on and the costing and stuff that were being mentioned around in the media. It's a clear signal that was not the case. When we came in, we started engaging with companies that had submitted proposal. We had already been to China to look at the CID facility. We went to Kenya to look at the EDAPS. We thought it was a brilliant concept, which was an integrated population registration system, which was going to do the registration once, and all other institutions were going to use the same system, including putting their data on the card, a smart card with a huge memory size, the same thing.
Okay.
You understand?
Instant issuance?
Well, like I told you, I personally, from my background, had my own reservations with instant issuance on such a large scale.
Okay.
And I have explained that on this show. Okay. So it was at that time that the IMS was also claiming that they already have commitment for the national ID card. So that took us a very long time to get to the conclusion that there was no commitment. And when that conclusion came, that there was a site acceptance that had to be, factory acceptance that had to be done to accept the central system they had built for NIA. And we engaged management, first of all, passed a resolution that PPP was not appropriate. NIA management passed a resolution that PPP was not appropriate for a national ID issuance for nationals.
Which year was this?
This was in 2015, late 2015.
And who was the CEO then?
I was the chief executive then.
Okay.
And then the NIA board also passed the same resolution. that PPP was not appropriate. You know, they are all there.
Okay.
You know, and so at that point, you know, IMS really wanted us to look at the central system or what have you. So what we sought to do was that we engaged them in a discussion. This is a central system that had been built for this purpose. I wish I could explain how it came into existence.
No, see, because some of the detail will be lost on the people. I think that some specific questions ought to be answered.
Okay.
The question that I want answered is IMS and the contract they are currently having the best for the nation today?
No, it is not.
Is IMS the best company to do the job?
Well, it's not a matter of whether IMS is the best company to do it or not, because, of course, they have some very good partners. They are using Dermalog from Germany. Dermalog has one of the best APCs in the world.
Okay.
You understand? So,
but is the cost that's a problem?
The cost is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The PPP duration tying up the revenue for 15 years for your identity management system is a problem. That is, I think, the biggest problem. You see, they say IMS is investing $670 million.
Which they will take out within the period.
Within 15 years. You see, that confirms that, and then the government is also, NIA is also investing $500 and somewhat million within the 15 years. So all this money, at least it confirms that an identity management system done properly has the potential to generate all this revenue. So why can't the state do this at a cost, even if it was going to cost us 300 million, and recoup all the 1.2 billion, even if I'm not saying
I get your point, but we'll take a break. When we come back,
yes,
we'll also be examining exactly why the voter ID card is such an important thing when it comes to the registration, and why the birth certificate and the passport might not be adequate at this particular point in time. We sure are with the immediate past CEO of the National Identification Authority, Kwame Griffiths, on the national ID, the Ghana card system, and the problems being identified, and Karen Buhaha before the court and the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Welcome back. This is UPfront. My name is Raymond Darkwa. The conversation we're having today is to do with whether or not it was appropriate for us to go for 1.2 billion, and we understand it's somewhere around 1.4 billion if we want to believe the minority and Mr. Kwame Griffiths, who is a former NIA boss. Also, whether or not we should engage this grouping that's currently engaging in the registration for as long as 15 years, and what the fruits thereof is supposed to be. And the crux of the matter is what we are going to now. It is clearly about what qualifies one to be part of the exercise. Assuming we close our eyes to the monetary and also the financial and the duration matters that are already pending before not only the courts of the Republic of Ghana, but also in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. You know that the minority has boycotted the registration. It hasn't prevented some other groupings from also going through the registration. You understand that former Chief of Staff, Chief Justice, yes, and the other people that matter in the office of the President have already secured their cards. But we can continue our conversation. Now, I seem to get your point to do with why you're opposed to the 1.2 billion. It doesn't look like I can do much about it because you are not in charge anyway. Can you?
Well, I have in my press release, I have indicated that at least we know that a very reputable firm, Crown Agents, can do a credible value for money assessment of what we are talking about. And I don't see what the injury will be to government.
But there was value for money done. The government has indicated that consistently. That value for money was accepted by Cabinet. The subcommittee on technical stuff agreed to it.
Well, here's
why would you think there was a need for any repetition of that exercise?
Here's the deal. In NIA's own release, they said that the figures justifying the cost were consistent with the firm's figures.
Yeah.
NIA has an issue with the FIMS figures.
So the FIMS was what was done some time ago for foreigners, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We have an issue with the FIMS figures because there was no credible value for money done for the FIMS. In fact, the company that did the value for money for the FIMS system was also a director of IMS.
So let me be clear. Who did the FIMS system?
It's IMS. IMS, you know,
I say,
partnership.
Under whose tenure as NIA Boss did this
that
happen?
was under Dr. Haji's time.
Okay.
But this emerged during an audit I commissioned.
Okay.
In fact, there was even a struggle as to whether I could do a forensic audit when I had, because the Attorney General's legal opinion has said NIA should conduct an investigative audit.
Okay.
So I thought.
So it did a forensic audit? And
no, it didn't. They didn't.
It didn't happen.
They opposed the forensic audit.
So I'm saying that was there
even though I wrote to them telling them that forensic audits don't manufacture audit issues.
I get your point.
It only brings them out when they exist. So why the fight?
My question is that determining that the FIMS project was problematic was done by a forensic audit.
No.
Who
it was an audit, not a forensic one.
Just an audit.
An ordinary audit.
External auditors came in?
Yes, it was done by Pricewaterhouse.
Coopers.
And yes, Coopers. And that report is there. Number two, NIA's internal audit reports are there detailing problems we had with the FIMS arrangement. That is also there. Audit Service also did an audit. I mean, more or less affirming all the issues that NIA had also raised. NIA's internal audit was before I became Chief Executive. Audit Service independent, not within my chain of command. So all these documents and other correspondence, because IMS had threatened that they were going to sue us, and the claims they made, I had explained in a detailed letter. And that letter was there, several letters, where they said they had spent 70 million. I pointed out the contrary. All those documents are handed over to Professor Atifwa.
I get you. And yet they went ahead to deal with this.
Yes.
But Professor Atifwa says that he was also told to do it because it was
by a technical committee. The question I have is that, did this information get passed on to the technical committee? That is the question a nation should be asking.
Do you suspect it was not?
It wasn't.
How do you know it wasn't?
Because I've spoken to some of the technical committee members. That's number one. Number two, the mandate given to the technical committee, which I was present, as soon as we mentioned that they wanted to form the technical committee, the decision was that heads of technology of the various institutions should be there. Who is to chair? Dr. Atifwa offered to chair the committee.
Okay.
Okay. Which I found very strange because you're a lawyer. I mean, that aside, well, perhaps you don't need to be a technical person to chair such a committee. But, and then the SNIT IT boss, who was in the news a few months, also offered to assist. So the two of them were tasked with the responsibility of steering the affairs of the committee. The terms of reference were very clear to develop an RFP, because at that point, a meeting that took place in the vice president's office, which I was present, and I mentioned the EDAPS thing, the first thing that was said was that the decision by the vice president's office was to go competitive bidding.
Okay.
So the terms of reference, which I was in copy, I have a copy of the terms of reference, was clearly that an RFP had to be developed. But the initial report that came out, the first thing I saw was that there was a report that was making a claim that NIA had already, more or less, insinuating that NIA had already engaged a company to do the registration of nationals, more or less procured a system for that already. That was the first report that came out. And I still have the email, you know. So I called a personnel at the vice president and I said, no, this is not true. We haven't done that. There are several reports that point to the fact we haven't done that. At the last few, a few weeks before I handed over to, we engaged IMS. We sat down and gave conditions. And I have the conditions right here, for which government will accept the central system.
Forgive me, we can't go through all of them.
And the conditions were very clear.
Okay.
That they were going to hand over the system to NIA, for NIA to develop on top of the system, engage anybody they wanted. So clearly, if you go by that condition, and it's captured in a letter dated November 29, 2016. If you go by all the conditions which they accepted, those conditions created the playing field for anybody else to do the solution.
Okay. I get your point.
So the direction to more or less indicate that NIA had expanded the system was against, what was actually on the
Again,
ground.
my question to you, how was IMS contracted to give us the cards? Sole sourcing, competitive tendering, restricted tendering?
Through NIA, you mean for the foreigners or for the nationals?
For the nationals.
Well, now they have done sole sourcing.
Now they are done.
Yes.
But what was the plan to do competitive tendering?
Well, we were already talking to EDAPS. It was also a sole source arrangement.
Okay.
But the decision to curtail the EDAPS discussion was that they wanted competitive bidding.
Okay. So
you understand?
They didn't go that way.
But it didn't go
and
that
they chose the IMS
yes.
to do
and
so.
then we have 1.4 billion contract sole source.
So are we losing any money in this case?
Of course we are losing.
How much are we losing?
First of all, that is why I am insisting that submit all the quantities, bill of quantities, to a credible company to do value for money assessment. In any case, if you claim you have done value for money analysis, then you should be proud to do that for a credible company like Crown Agents to confirm what you have done.
I want an amount. How much are we losing?
You mean in terms of, well, you can't specifically say we are losing this, but for the first year alone, you are saying you are spending $293 million in total. Somebody says he will do the issuance of the cards for 124 million. You understand?
I get you. I'm running out of time. There's an important question as to whether or not we should involve the voter ID card. At what point in time did we realize that the voter ID card could not and may not be used as a mode of registering, determining my identity?
Well, when I was there was nothing like that to exclude a voter ID card.
But there was a legislation that went to amend the act that was supposed to be functioning in that case.
Well, first of all, we didn't even entertain any. There was a document that had been submitted to the Attorney General's office before I came into office. Yeah. When the Attorney General contacted me whether they should proceed, I asked them to hold on.
Okay. So the legislation came from your time?
No, not to exclude the voter's ID card.
Not at all?
Not at all.
But was it expressly stated as, because there's a birth certificate, there was a passport, was it?
Yes, that is a late deletion. That is a deletion that was sent to Parliament, I think in I don't know whether it's 2017, but the act is, I think, the amendment is 2018 or so.
Yes, it's 2017,
so there was nothing
like
the deletion of a voter's ID card. Why am I saying that? Because at that time, we knew what we were doing.
Okay.
In terms of, and let me say this, there's something called exception management in identity management. Exception management in identity management. Various stages of the identity management process, you need to accommodate exceptions.
Yes, but because I don't have time, I want the other question. What's the problem with not having the voter's ID as part of it?
Well, first of all, when you want to register, you look at all the documents, identity documents that are currently in use. And then you rank them as to which one has more or less, has this gone through deduplication? What coverage does this have and what have you? And then when you do that, you select your list of breeder documents, which will be used to establish eligibility.
Can you make the point in 10 seconds for me?
And the NIA claiming that they are going to have people who don't have any of birth certificate or passport to go through swearing of oath.
Vouch for them.
It's an exception. It's an exception management process, which means that it is when you have accommodated most of your population, you will still have a very small number of people who will not have all the breeder documents you are talking about. Those are the people who you use things like bring the before you can be registered. If you don't have any of this, you can use the assemblyman or what have you to vouch for you. But it is the other way around.
So it's an anomaly that they are exempted.
Yes, it is an anomaly. It is a serious anomaly. And not only that, they have the process upside down. Now, what is usually used to manage exceptions in the few cases is now the norm, more or less the general...
I get your point, but unfortunately, I've run out of time. I'm sure we can do this conversation once again, go into details of this one. My guest in studio on the conversation of whether or not the national ID system is functioning the way it ought to function, and the Ghana card is Kwame Griffiths. He left office for Professor Kanatefa to take over as NIA Boss. Thank you so much for watching us today.